Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Star Trek Discoverage, the live podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about this week's episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban, and how do you show us a Borg snake and he doesn't say, "You will be assimilated"? Joining me... Can't figure it out. Joining me on the show as usual is my co-host. She's also the co-host of the Generations Geek podcast, a more or less family-friendly celebration of geekdom. It's Ella Pearson. Ella, welcome back to Discoverage.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Styling and profiling at the same time.
It's been a big week.
Oh, yes. For you personally or for the world?
I think only for me. The world?
What's going on in the world? Yeah. What's been going on with you?
With me, let's see. Well, you gave the intro wrong because as we discussed previously, this is a Rings of Power podcast.
Oh, that's correct. Yes, of course.
So we're gonna have to roll it back. Second of all,
nothing else is happening. Only the Rings of Power.
Nothing else is happening. Only Rings of Power. I want death to the monarchy and all that, but our bestie Liz.
Yeah.
She's down.
It's sad. I mean, I'm not a fan of the monarchy either, but, a nice old lady died, and so that is sad.
She was 96, so I don't feel super... We had a whole, I was watching some live streams. It is complicated because I do want to be like, no more death to the monarchy. Yeah. But it is whoa.
And on Star Trek Day, of all things, try to take the...
I know.
Take the glory there. Although I did see, she's not quite cold yet, but I did see a tweet or two, people saying like, we're on track for Irish unification in 2024, just like TNG said. So who knows?
I was thinking about
new Prime Minister
today.
sweeps clean. So we'll see what happens with that, but that falls outside of the purview of this exclusively Rings of Power podcast.
Exactly.
You have now seen, as I have, the first 2 episodes of the Rings of Power. What do you think?
I really enjoyed it. I've seen both episodes 3 times.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There are parts that I'm a little nervous about. I'm nervous, to see, where they go, but I'm also excited. I thought it was super, respectful of Tolkien's works in a way that I wasn't really anticipating. After Galadriel's initial, intro,
yeah,
I thought it was gonna, the camera was gonna come down like that, and it was gonna be like a Game of Thrones ripoff.
Okay.
And it totally wasn't.
And she does a superhero landing, and yeah.
Exactly. It totally wasn't. What'd you think?
Well, I spent a lot of time in the last few years watching things that I didn't think I was going to like, and either liking them or learning to find the good in them. That's a bad setup for me to say, I really actually liked it a lot.
Okay, good.
And maybe it helped that almost 20 minutes before I pushed play on it, I had finished the extended version of The Return of the King after watching the 2 previous extended editions. So I was in a Tolkien frame of mind, right? I was there, and I started the show, and it was a smooth transition. That's one thing I like about it, is that, say what you will about the characters they've added or the time compression, it felt like Tolkien. And I was given to, all the things that I read, I was given to, understand that it was going to have to be different for intellectual property reasons. And I know there are some changes that they've made, but it kind of felt like the films to me. And I think that that's a good thing. Something that people have been complaining about is Warrior Galadriel, or Gil-galad. Gil-galad being I don't say no more. We're secret politicians. I'm like, what? The problem with the Lord of the Rings is that people forget that we only see, 70 years at the tail end of 3 long ages. And so if you see a character who's all she's got the ring that connected to her sleeve and she's like, I am Galadriel. She's been through so much to become, the totally switched on,
I
Galadriel,
was
Lady
there,
of
Gandalf,
Lorien.
10,000 years ago.
Exactly. Like maybe before he was there, he was a little pipsqueak speechwriter, politician. You know, like people forget that elves have a journey as well, and that they take thousands of years to make their journeys. So I'm fine with them like playing fruit basket upset with the characterization a little bit. Because they're going to show us, I think, how it leads to the characters that we know later on. I was making a joke to my girlfriend about how, and this is the opposite of what I mean by this, but it was a thing I saw on Twitter where it was we were watching Obi-Wan, and he's got a lightsaber, but he hasn't fought anybody with his lightsaber. And we're like, this is Obi-Wan. How is he not doing Obi-Wan stuff with the lightsaber? And there was a tweet that was like, yeah, the way they make TV now, in the 90s, if there was a show called Surf Draculas, every single week, Dracula would be out there surfing and solving crimes. But the streaming TV, the way they do it now, the last 5 minutes of the 10th episode of the first season, he'd get a bored and be like, maybe I'll do some surfing someday. And so normally we don't want that. I want to see Dracula surf, but I'm fine knowing that Dracula will surf one day. But what does he get up to in the meantime before he gets a surfboard? And that's what I think we've got. That's what Tolkien would have wanted, right? He was, he was tapping out his pipe and thinking about surfing Draculas. I know that.
I think maybe someday Elrond will marry my daughter.
Right, yeah, right. We're friends now. Married. Later you'll be my mother-in-law, and then, oh boy.
Besties later. Oh,
you'll be
hello.
Telepathically talking in my head all the time. Yep.
Whole thing.
So, yeah, I thought it was really great.
Yeah.
I think that it'll be tough for it to be a TV show because instead of just having, a quest where we're following people through a journey of Middle Earth, now we're just going to jump from place to place in Middle Earth. And so the pacing is going to feel a lot different than the books or the movies. But I mean, 2 episodes in, I'm totally happy with it.
Yeah. And I think it totally feels more, it feels like the Silmarillion or something to me. You know what I mean? Like the way that things are like happening and they're big. Like, does that make sense? Like Galadriel, I know this is controversial, I know, but like Galadriel jumping off the ship to like swim back to Middle Earth, that feels very much like would be like almost a throwaway line in the Silmarillion, where it's like Galadriel swam 2,000 leagues to get back to
but something totally epic. Yeah. Did you like how? Yeah, like
epic. That's the right word. Epic.
Yeah, and they did a similar thing to the films, where the films kind of like wrap up, like the War of Elves and Sauron in the first 10 minutes. This was like, we're gonna yada 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 the War of Wrath. Like, you get it. It was really bad, but we're doing this now. Now we're doing this. We're doing something else. Yeah, but just sort of giving you the background.
Felagund. It's Felagund, right? In fighting, where he's like screaming.
Oh, Finrod.
Galadriel's brother.
Finrod Felagund.
Finrod.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Or he was like screaming, and during the battle, I was like, "That's when I knew it was serious. That's when I knew that they meant business. That's when I knew Bezos meant business."
Yeah, great. Yeah. If Bezos wasn't a coward, he would have given us werewolves, though. Where are the werewolves? That's what I want to know. Well, people probably want to know why we're not talking about Star Trek.
Me, the kinslaying.
Yes, the kinslaying, the whole deal. Hopefully we'll see that in the future, and we'll definitely talk about the Rings of Power maybe a little bit in the future as a treat. But in the meantime, we've got to talk...
As a treat, if you're good.
Yes, a little taste of Lembas. But we're going to have to talk about...
A little bite, a crumb.
About Star Trek Day, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately.
Unfortunately.
A lot of news came out of this. Is, of course, Star Trek Day, the 8th of September, when Star Trek premiered in America. In Canada, they celebrated on the 6th. On the 6th, but that's a little different. That's okay. And they had a lot of announcements in the streaming presentation that they presented for us. And I thought we could just go bing right through all of them. Probably the biggest, is it the biggest? I don't know. To me, it's the biggest. The one I'm the most excited about is they announced that Carol Kane will be joining the cast of Strange New Worlds for season 2. If you're unfamiliar with who Carol Kane is, shame on you. She's in The Princess Bride. She was on Taxi for a long time. She's Academy nominated for a movie that nobody remembers because it didn't really last. But she was on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, of course. She is a classic longtime comedic actress, and she'll be stepping into the role of chief engineer on the Enterprise.
All right.
So was this like Are they doing a thing where they're just doing like classic comedic actors and comedians are going to play engineers on Starfleet ships now? Because I've got a couple suggestions for them.
I feel like it's an easy role to slot in the comedic relief,
Plus, they're
you
always,
know?
yeah. I think Geordi is an exception to the idea of the engineers always like, oh man, this thing's blowing up and this thing's on fire and yeah, I'll get to it, Captain. I'll get to it. Geordi always kind of had his stuff together as far as that went, but yeah, that's a good role that you can put like a frazzled comedic actor into.
Yeah.
To kind of cast against that, though, I was thinking like, what about like, how about Stephen Wright? Stephen Wright could just sort of like
Oh.
be the deadpan engineer, oh, it's gonna blow up, Captain. Or like my girlfriend suggested Wanda Sykes. Have Wanda Sykes
Yeah.
be the kind of sassy engineer. Star Trek is no stranger to having comedic actors on. I mean, obviously Whoopi Goldberg has a very important role on TNG, but I don't really remember Jimmy Doohan doing a tight five at the Friars Roast. So this is sort of like an interesting new trend that has kind of started. I don't think it's a bad trend necessarily. But I wonder if this is part of. I know I was on my BS a couple months ago about how like Star Trek's not really funny. It's like maybe they understand that and they're trying to rectify that by having people in. Bring Sarah Silverman back. Get Rain Robinson back.
That would be funny.
She travels through
You know who I
time.
could see for an easy like a slot in chief engineer comedic role in Lower Decks?
Yeah.
John Mulaney.
John Mulaney. Sure. Yeah.
Maybe controversial, but the man's funny.
Yeah, and he's got
Unique
experience
voice,
doing
recognizable
voiceover.
voice.
Yeah, a lot of voiceover
Exactly.
work. So he'll just come in as Chip or Dale. Which one was he? I don't remember which one he was. But yeah, the animated one. But yeah, so
Mike McMahon, you're on the horn. Obviously, go ahead and
yeah, right. Yeah,
just go ahead and make the call, Mike.
he watches with a pen and paper and he just writes everything down every week.
Yeah, he
So-
takes notes. He's my biggest fan.
So no release date on the series yet, but that is coming up. Looking forward to that. Also, it was announced that Billy Campbell will be returning as the outrageous Okana for Lower Decks, an animated or computer animated Okana this time.
Lots of some of this news I'm not very like, I'm not very shocked.
Yeah,
Like we'll be returning,
I don't.
new actor, great casting.
I like Billy Campbell. I just don't. Why are we? Why this? They had him in Lower Decks and he had like 2 lines, like it was barely an appearance. And like now he's going to be in Prodigy, and it's just like why? What made us say, oh yeah, that's the guy. You got to get that guy. No, it sounds like no offense to Billy Campbell, but Okana's in like 1 episode. We all understand how he was definitely designed as a character to be really appealing, and the character's just like, I think I get it. He's just like hot mud. But now they want to bring him back, and I'm like, there's plenty of people that they did it today. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but there's plenty of people you can bring back from TNG if you want to. Like, we're going to double dip on Okana? I don't know.
Might as well.
I guess so.
The,
I guess
the
so.
I don't know if you've heard, but like the other TNG cast, I think they're a little busy.
That's true. That's true. I'll just say real quick that Lower Decks, the second half of season 1, will be returning on October 27th. And of course, we'll be here to talk about that as soon as this show wraps up. Picard. Did you see the Picard trailer?
I did not get the chance to watch it,
I can't.
but I do know.
Okay.
I know I didn't do my homework. I do know that some may glimpse perhaps a plate set. Perhaps a 16-piece dinner plate, salad plate, bowl, mug
That's
appears
sure.
in the trailer.
Butter,
and it will be
butter
available
smooth
to buy
plug.
on StarTrekUnlimited.com.
Just slip that right in there.
Slip it right in. Go ahead and go ahead and go to StarTrekUnlimited.com the second that episode airs.
Yes. I can't describe to you too much happens in it, but I will say that it sets up the plot that something else is happening. and we need a ship. And so Picard and Riker are looking for a ship, and the ship they turn to is the Luna-class USS Titan with
Nice.
7
I
on
did see it.
board.
I saw a tweet. 7.
And I'm trying to count the pips in the real quick view. I think Commander 7. So I'm not sure if we know who the captain of the Titan is. If it's not Riker, maybe it is. We don't know. So yeah, it looks good. We all,
I'm
I
super
think, know what
stoked.
to expect. Yeah. All the big ones are back. Do you think that they'll bring Whoopi into that? You can't do a TNG reunion without Whoopi.
Yeah. Because this whole season 3 is like a to TNG. So they're gonna have Whoopi.
A farewell kiss, not a kiss
A
off.
farewell kiss. A smooch.
And Picard season 3 will premiere February 16th of next year. Let's talk really quick about the Con podcast. There's going to be a Con podcast, as it was rumored earlier by Nick Meyer, and Nick Meyer actually appeared at the event today to announce that they would be doing an audio drama podcast, Star Trek Con SETI Alpha 5, a scripted podcast, which is interesting.
Did you listen to the Seven and Rafi scripted audio drama thing?
No, I didn't. No. And there's precedent for it, yeah. But that feels, to coin a phrase, supplemental, even though I'd watch a Seven Raffi show. And then the guy who did Star Trek's 2, 4, and 6 has a really good idea, and they're like, podcast. So I don't know if it's just like a budget thing, or they feel like the idea is not good enough, or I think we posited on an earlier show, it's a good idea, but we want to get this audio thing rolling. Like, we've got the domination, we've got the film. Well, we don't have the films, but we've got films, we've got TV, we've got books. The audio space is a virgin space for us. And so let's take this Con idea and let's put it over there. I don't know. He's going to write it. Nick Meyer's writing it. So I'm going to check it out.
It is just odd. I maybe heard through the grapevine that the Seven and Rafi audio drama was perhaps lacking a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting to me if they would choose to do another one. Although I haven't listened to it myself.
Yeah.
So I can't really, pretty much everything I'm saying is.
Well, I'm gonna. If I ever get any free time, I'm going to listen to it, and I'll come back and tell you what I think about it.
I just feel like I don't know very many people who listen to like a fictional podcast. I know one person who listens to a podcast that isn't like people talking about fictional stuff, and like that is actually like an audio drama and not like an audiobook. Like, I listen to audiobooks day in, day out, so I don't know why I'm talking smack about audio dramas like it's any different. Yeah. But
it depends on like how it's set up, though. I think Star Trek would translate well to an audio format, but there's some things. It absolutely would. There's some things that just don't do it. Like, I tried to listen to Marvel has a lot of podcasts, scripted podcasts, and I listened to like a Black Widow one, and it's just like, Natasha shot a grappling hook and swung over a thing, and I'm like, this is all just stuff. This should be this is visual. You know what I mean? It's not really like
Natasha put on her 6th black catsuit.
Yeah, she zipped up her catsuit. Sound effect. But that's visual, and like Star Trek has visual elements, but it's storytelling, and so I think it would work. So I'm gonna let you know if it's any good.
Did you ever? Thank you. Did you ever play? There used to be like an app that was voiced, like a game that was voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, and it was like the game was almost entirely audio, except for like there were 2 buttons on the screen for you to like walk.
Oh,
there might have been like another button. It was called like the Nightjar or something, and it got taken off the App Store.
I thought it was the Imitation Game.
Oh. I'm gonna Google it right now, but it's like, I would love to see Star Trek branch into something like that, where it's like, if you're doing an audio, like do something like really interesting, or like do a new, like launch a new, like a video game. You know what I mean?
Well, there is there is the upcoming Telltale game, which is
right.
Their games are less, like bang shooty stuff, but more like, storytelling, interactive action, and making choices.
It's the same people that did the Walking Dead game.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's same people are working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
something like that.
that's encouraging. Yeah, I just feel like there are other things that I'd like them to branch out into, like that game that was like only audio. It was like amazing because they'd be like, okay, be really quiet, and then it would like you could hear like the monsters or whatever, like there were like aliens on your spaceship,
Huh. Okay.
and you would
Interesting.
have to be really quiet, walk really slow, otherwise they would like get you.
Huh.
Terrifying.
That sounds neat. What was it
It
called?
was super neat. I feel like it was called the Nightjar. Hang on, I'm gonna look at it because it was after a while it just like disappeared off the app store.
Oh, okay.
But it was weird because it was like a Cumberbatch had already done like a season or two of Sherlock, and then it was like all of a sudden, okay, he's voicing this game.
Sure.
Hang on. But it was really, really interesting. Yeah, the
Uh,
first hit is a. Does anyone remember Nightjar audio based game on Reddit r
Nightjar.
slash iOS gaming?
Okay.
Um,
Uh, yeah. Well, you can't play it. It's gone. But anyway,
it's gone.
you
Looks
had
like
it.
there's some videos on YouTube though, so you
Oh yeah.
know.
Just watch the YouTube videos. The real gaming.
I, I think it might be. Well, I'll look at that later.
Okay.
We'll see whether or not I can get the Nightjar back on my phone.
All right. Well, you'll give us an update on that later on. But
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jailbreak my phone, but
that's the yeah. That's the news from Star Trek Day, and a very happy Star Trek Day to all of you. On this Star Trek Day, we've seen the third episode of the third season of Lower Decks. It's an episode called Mining the Mind's Minds, and we're here to talk all about it. But first, as always, a warning. We're setting a course for the spoiler zone listeners, so be warned. We're glad you've decided to join us, but if you haven't seen the episode, spoilers are incoming. The official synopsis for Mining the Mind's Minds is, on a remote science outpost, stone orbs are bringing fantasies to life. Tendi starts her first day as a senior science officer trainee. I don't know if that's her fantasy or not. She didn't go down to the planet. This episode was written by Brian D. Bradley, and it was directed by Phil Mark Sagadraka. And we get a star date on this episode. The star date is 58256.2. As far as facts and guest stars in this episode features the return of Susan Gibney as Dr. Leah Brahms, at least in virtual form, but she's really more comfortable playing her in virtual form anyway, I'm sure, right? 2 out of 3 is not bad. I think it's really interesting. Gibney has a history with Star Trek. She was also on DS9, and I think she was one of the finalists for Janeway, I believe, or at least she was in the running. She read for it, and I think she was near the end. So it makes sense to bring her back. I'm still stuck on this Billy Campbell thing still. What we should do is they need to do an Avengers of all the people they can get together. So we get Sonia Gomez together, we get Okana, we get have Ashley Judd come back as Robin Leffler, and get like the B team of like guest stars to go on a mission together. If you really got to commit to this, guys, come on.
that's a Lower Decks episode right there.
Yeah, right. All right. So taking the notes, Mike McMahon.
Yeah, Mike. Okay, yep. Mike's taking the minutes for the meeting.
What'd you think about Mining the Mind's Minds?
I liked it. I think that this season maybe is not my favorite season of Lower Decks. And not to say that I'm not like enjoying myself, but I feel like the first couple of seasons, they came out really strong, and I was like laughing and being like, I can't believe this. And I feel a little bit like I'm feeling a little bit more subdued this time around.
Okay.
I think this episode is my favorite of the 3 that we've seen.
Okay.
I wish they had gone like you said about like the Borg snake, like I wish they had done more bits. Like it was reminding me of the Boggart scene in Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
Where they're all like, and they all see their fears.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I wanted there to be like less plot lines, but I wanted them to spend more time on something.
Yeah.
Within the episode, like I wanted to spend more time on the planet, or like more time, like with a freaky bird mentor.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? What are your feelings?
It does. I mean, we talked about this last week, that like it really, for a funny cartoon episode of Star Trek, this is a really good episode of TNG. Like they're really leaning into the narrative and the storylines, and I think that's fine. That's a totally valid way to go. I just feel like I'm sitting down for this funny comedy show and I'm getting kind of like a mini episode of TNG, which was a pretty solid episode of TNG. Like they had an A plot and a B plot, and they both were, not connected necessarily, but they were both strong. Um, so I'm just like, it goes to the core of what I've always thought was the show's not problem, but the question that it needs to answer about itself, which is like, what are you, show? Like, can you do both? Can you have it all? Are you a funny show where
Can
things
you
don't
do,
really,
yeah.
where things don't really matter so much? Or are you a show that's more about trying to recreate, the TNG? And I think the people that make the show would agree that they can do both. And I think the show often kind of does one or the other, but less often it's doing both of those, at the same time. That being said, this is like a totally solid premise, and we've seen
Oh yeah.
fantasy planets, and we've seen people having their desires sort of fulfilled, and that going wrong. It's an old kind of trope. And I thought that they executed it interestingly and had an interesting sort of resolution or a reason behind it, like the idea that like this hapless scientist, because they're always rescuing these scientists that live out in the middle of nowhere. Why does some old guy with a hot wife live, on a planet in the middle of nowhere? And he's like, I'm doing science.
Because that's the life.
That's the life.
Dream.
But maybe it wasn't enough of a life, because this scientist is like cooking up this plot with the rock guys to like sell information. So I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of an interesting thing. Just a Picard speech or two, a funny scene with Data, and this would be a TNG episode. So if that's what they were going for, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I feel like I wanted them to, and I think this has been a theme the past couple of episodes. It's like I want them to either be like, we're still being ha funny the whole way through, or I want ha funny and then like the punch in the gut. Yeah. And I feel like especially the stuff with like the dreams and the nightmares like could have been way more funny or way more like whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's the fact that it's Star Trek? And again, if you want to hear me complain about this at length, I have an episode from last year on Enterprising Individuals where I talk about how I don't think Star Trek's funny. Let's try to fix that. But do you think that it is the nature of Star Trek in that if they're going to go totally funny, I'm sure there's plenty of like episodes of sitcoms where it's hilarious, but like maybe we learned something at the end, maybe we learned something. And we always have to learn something at the end of a Star Trek episode, which I like. I'm not complaining about. But do you think that like gets in the way? Because if you just have like I'm thinking of Rick and Morty, which is not the greatest show of all time, but it's definitely a touchstone for this show. I think. And like there are episodes of Rick and Morty where crazy things happen, but then they like make a point about like, well, you got to love your family, or Rick's real depressed, y'all. But there's also episodes like the heist episode where like, this isn't about anything. Like we're just took a premise and we're just working the premise as far as we can go. We're telling every single joke until it becomes completely ridiculous. And then the episode's over. And like maybe like Star Trek or Lower Decks should do that more instead of trying to be like, but they learned something. Because at the end of this episode, I like Dr. Ta'ana, but once again, she had the advice for Tendi. And it's like, we've seen that like 4 times now. Tendi's like, I don't know what to do. And the doctor's like, come on, kid, you just got to, be yourself and just do what you got to do.
Fuck up.
And like, if they weren't committed to like having us learn something, we wouldn't have to have done that. And the whole thing could have just been a total comedy of errors. So I don't know. I still think that the show is, they're Orville-ing. For somebody who's never seen the Orville.
You think they're angling?
I never watched the Orville.
They're gonna start funny and then move towards.
Well, they've definitely
serious.
They have done that. Whether that is a intentional or it's just a temporary trend, I don't know. But they are doing that. I think that these last 3 episodes has shown us that. But that being said, bring Carol Kane. If Carol Kane's in the building, bring her onto Lower Decks. No reason we can't have Carol Kane on Lower Decks.
Get her in the room.
They've got a ton of comedic actors that show up here. Paul F. Tompkins is back as Dr. Bird. And Dr. Bird. Well, there's not a lot of big ones this week, but I mean, just there's always like comedic actors coming onto the show. So what'd you think about everybody's dreams and or nightmares?
I thought they were good. The bit with um Mariner's like not girlfriend. I really liked.
Yeah, that was the most interesting to me because
It was,
Boimler, wanted to be promoted. No
yeah, of
surprises
course.
there.
Yeah, we know. Yeah.
But having Mariner be reluctant to like have a relationship or to like commit to a relationship, I think we could have guessed that, but we didn't know what was going on with Jennifer. And when she said, it's always good in a show to have them say one thing, and then the alien orb that sees your deeper innermost thoughts is like,
Yeah,
no, you're
exactly.
wrong. You do want to have a
No,
commitment. Yeah.
liar.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then she became a werewolf. See, come on, Lord of the
There you
Rings,
go.
Star Wars,
Full circle. We
Star
brought it
Trek
back
can do
around.
werewolves. Yeah, actually, Star Wars has a werewolf too, but that's another story. I don't know how I feel about the other California class ships thinking the Cerritos is cool. They saved it. They kind of downgraded it at the end when the people from the Carlsbad were like, well, I mean, it's just sort of like of all the lower deck ships, we
Yeah.
think that you're the coolest lower deck ship. But even that is like, speaking of like Taxi, nobody likes anybody who works at Taxi, right? Everybody that works at Taxi is like a weirdo and a loner and a loser. And if they were the best cab company in town, not a lot of comedy there. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I resent the idea that people think that that the Cerritos is like a cool crew that's really getting it done.
I
Um,
thought 100% that it was going to be like they were those weren't the actual officers and that they were
oh, they were
like
fantasies too.
a fantasy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I thought 100% I was like, there's no way.
I was
There's
waiting.
absolutely no way.
Yeah,
When they're
I
like,
was
you
waiting.
guys are so cool. I was
Yeah,
like, no.
we got one shoe, and the other shoe would have been that's what was happening. And I was thinking that
Yeah, I was waiting for a twist.
up until the point where they introduced like they were stealing the data or whatever. I kept thinking, okay, so at some point we're going to learn that there's another. They're inside of it's a holodeck inside of a holodeck. There's another thing that they don't know about, and they didn't do that. Um, but that's fine. Speaking of sitcoms, it reminds me of an episode of
My
Cheers
specialty.
where Carla takes part in a barmaid competition to see who's the best barmaid. And she thinks it's dumb. She doesn't want to do it the whole episode. And she finally ends up doing it because she wants to prove it to herself that she's the best barmaid. And she does all this amazing stuff. She pours all the drinks. Somebody tries to trip her because they don't want her to win. She does a flip over the guys. They get some stunt actress in to do a flip. She's the best, totally. Then the judges decide, okay, and the person that gets it is Sheila. And Sheila did the whole thing in a bikini. She's a total bimbo. And Carla's like, she spilled all the drinks. And they're like, who cares? Look at her. So like the idea is that, yes, Carla is an amazing barmaid, but she can't get the recognition. She can't have people respect her. It's not funny if she's respected. You know what I mean? So I certainly hope that the entire fleet doesn't think the Cerritos is cool.
Carla's an amazing barmaid, but she's just not hot enough.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. The Cerritos isn't hot enough. Come on, who are we kidding here?
I agree. It's tough because I feel like it is funny for like them to be the, oh, if only I were Ensign Boimler, like
Yeah,
that is funny.
yeah,
But it also is like, well, the reason why we love lower decks is because they suck and they're the worst. Like,
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like they're bad at their not that they're not actually bad at their jobs, but the reason why we love them is because they're a little bit, they're building in buffer time.
Yeah. To have the Carlsbad crew approach them like they are heroes, and then over the course of the episode be completely disabused of that notion because the Cerritos guys screw everything up. That's funny.
Yeah,
That's funny.
that
Yeah.
is funny.
It's about status. All comedy's about status.
Mm-hmm.
Is Foot Guy a recurring character? I feel like when we see
Book guy?
I'll explain.
Oh.
Is he the so we do this bit, and they've done this bit a couple times. It's funny, where Dr. Ta'ana has to do something horrible to somebody, and there's somebody in the bed, and they're like, "Oh, you're just kidding about that, right?" Or like, "Oh, careful with that axe." Has that been the same guy? I didn't go back and check, but I feel like it's been a guy who is like that, the Foot Guy in this episode.
I don't know.
Is that because recurring character of guy who always ends up in sick bay and has his limbs chopped off? That is funny. That is also funny.
And then someday we get an episode that's just about him.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He finally loses the
He's
foot
on the phone to his
that
HMO.
can't grow
Yeah.
up back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like, this has got to be an OSHA violation.
Yeah, right. He sues his bosses because of safety. What else? I don't usually care that much about shout outs, but I always like it when they shout out TAS. And I like seeing Kukulkan from How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth, the animated episode, the winged serpent. Although now they got two serpents. They got the Borg serpent and the winged serpent. Too many serpent hats, pick one serpent. But that was kind of cute. Yeah. Oh, and and the basketball game was kind of funny. Also, too many basketballs. They're shooting the basketballs into the things, or the orbs. That's funny. But then the guy comes out and goes, "You're treating them like basketballs." It's like, okay, that's a hat. And then also the key to them, I guess they were thinking about basketball, so that makes sense as well.
They
but
needed
anyway,
a clue,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, don't do too many basketballs. Did you think that I thought that the balding guy with a mustache was like, oh, did Billups get a new shirt or something? Isn't Billups also a guy who's balding and has a mustache? Is this if I go back and watch TNG, am I going to see a lot of bald guys with mustaches I didn't remember?
Is that not?
Or
wait.
could Paul Scheer just not be there that week, and so they just went, oh, make his shirt red instead of gold? I guess they have different hair.
Is that not? Wait, I'm looking at a picture because I was like, oh yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's fully not Billups. That's so funny. I was like, mustache man.
Yeah, because when I first saw him and then I heard his voice, I was like, oh no, that's not Paul Scheer. So anyway.
He's been in other. That's the same guy with the gray hair that was been in other episodes, right? Or has he not?
Maybe I've been confusing them this entire time. It's totally possible.
Was he just a red shirt this episode?
Yeah, he was just the lieutenant commander of
No, I know, but was he literally was it just oh, here's this guy and now he's gonna get turned to stone and then his arms are fixed?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if I've seen him before. I saw this episode in a daze. Every character was unfamiliar to me. Who is this person with purple hair? But
a haze of grief after the queen died.
But I think, yes, I still haven't.
I don't know what's going on.
50th Jubilee was only the other day. But yeah, I suppose it's totally true. The aforementioned scientists are always some, silver-haired white guy, who's a character actor. And so maybe they're playing into that. I also liked how they get the captains are getting the crappy thing from the people, and they're like, oh, no, you can have it. No, you can have it. So we better see that a chunk of that, a lump of that thing on her shelf in a future episode.
Oh, she saves a piece? That'd be funny.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
Put that next to her.
I'm reminded that anyone can betray you.
Anything else that you can think of to say about this episode? I think a pretty solid episode, all things told.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like when I hesitate so much to criticize Lower Decks, and I think it's because I love it so much, but I think it also is because even when I have a gripe with an episode of Lower Decks, it's the episode is still an amazing episode. It's still so much fun.
Yeah.
That to even be like, oh, I wish that this was better. It feels like I'm being this episode was bad, when in reality it's it's always amazing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, well, this would have worked better for me if it did the other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the snake could assimilate,
yeah,
then it would be, top 5.
The Borg have a lot of words: resistance and assimilate, and yeah. Add your distinctiveness to our own. Yeah. I can't think of anything else to say except I would have liked. I can't remember Commander Mustache's name now, but I would have liked to have seen another subplot where Dr. Ta'ana has to unstone him because he's okay at the end, but and it's fine to yada 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 that. But I was like, oh, that if that was Dr. Crusher, we would have a whole thing where she's trying to unlock the secrets of how they turned him to stone, and then had to sew his arms back on.